Hello everybody, this is MapleBob23 coming to you from the MapleBob23 channel. It is Saturday, September 26th, which is Batman Day. I was very busy today, so I didn't really have time to go out and participate in any of the Batman Day festivities. I posted online a little bit earlier today, and while I was contemplating buying some digital comic books that were on sale, I was going through the books I had to make sure that I didn't have any of them yet in physical form, and I realized that since May I've read a heck of a lot of stuff, so I thought for Batman Day I would go ahead and show you what I've read. First thing up isn't a comic book. It is called Our Gods Wear Spandex by Christopher Knowles. It's a book about comic books, kind of the esoteric origins of them. It goes all the way back from the pulps. It actually goes back to the one-sheets that they used to post in Britain. It's a very good book. It talks about the architecture of Manhattan. I think it could have been better because when I've heard Christopher Knowles speak about it, it comes off different than it does in this book, and I suspect that there is perhaps some editor things going on where they wanted him to write it in a different way. But all in all, it's a very interesting book. I highly recommend it if you're a fan of comic books and want to go deeper. Okay, now this is not in any particular order, except for like it's kind of grouped by the superhero or whatever. So earlier this year, I went to Half Price Books, and they had this giant stack of comic books for $10. So I bought it, and that kind of started to rekindle my interest. This was after the Avengers 2 came out, which I love that movie. I know like some people don't, but whatever. So some of these books I've had for a while, so I started with The Death of Superman, which I bought back in 2013, where I had another brief interest flicker with comic books because DC had put out 3 huge volumes of Nightfall, which I read all of those back then, and but I bought a bunch of classic ones, or what I thought would be classic ones. So The Death of Superman was right there, and one of the comics in my big bag of comic books was from the middle of this world without Superman, and so I thought it was finally time to read this. And the first volume, it's good, but it's a lot of fighting, and it was okay. You know, Doomsday comes to life. I'm sure everybody knows by now. This is the big event of the 90s when they decided to kill off Superman for about a year. And it does start out really cool because this monster called Doomsday just comes out of nowhere. They don't explain anything. They don't explain who he is. And he beats the Justice League. Superman is talking to a bunch of school kids who are becoming more cynical. And, you know, they like this character called Guy Gardner, who's a Green Lantern with anger issues. And I think eventually he becomes a Red Lantern. And I followed that up with World Without Superman, which the beginning of this was really good, but it kind of goes on too long, which I guess it has to, but it's a lot of Lois Lane being sad that Superman is dead, along with the Kents being sad that Superman is dead. It does have some very iconic moments, especially at the beginning, the funeral of Superman. It was just beautiful. You have all the superheroes marching behind his casket. And then the final chapter in the Superman saga was the return of Superman, which I enjoyed a great deal. You eventually have 4 people claiming the mantle of Superman. One is a cyborg, one is this guy who's like a takeoff on, is it John Henry, the railroad guy who like beats a machine but then dies anyways. And here he doesn't die, but then you have this other Superman who's really the core of the computer in the Fortress of Solitude. And then you have a clone of Superman who's sort of Superboy. But, you know, yeah, it's just kind of weird, but I really did enjoy this book. And then at Half Price Books, I followed it up with, I found Superman Doomsday, which I thought this book was really good. This is where they finally go into the origin of Doomsday, and then it has a story where Brainiac takes over Doomsday's body. Overall, it was good. I liked the last 2 volumes of this the best. I think the others are essential reading. Well, at least The Death of Superman is essential reading. You can probably skim through The World Without Superman. You know, but there's got interesting stuff in there too. So I don't know. It's like there's a whole cult dedicated to Superman. They steal his body. You know, some parts of it were really, really good. It just, yeah, I have mixed feelings on it because it didn't really have the action. And if you're reading comic books for the action, then the last 2 volumes are really, really satisfying. Here's another book I bought a while ago. I found this at Half Price Books. It's called Shamans Tears, and it was published by IDW. I don't know if that was the original publisher. I forget. The writer is Mike Grell. I really like this story. It's not quite a complete story, but it was overall satisfying, and I wish this character was still in books. It revolves around this character named Joshua Brand, who reluctantly, you know, when he's 16 years old, he runs away from the reservation. I think unknowingly he's gotten his girlfriend pregnant, and he just abandons her and his unborn child, and he goes to work for the federal government. At the same time, this has, especially the first few issues, have some really good political satire about whatchamacallit, genetics. And genetically altered beings aren't considered human, so they don't really have any rights. They're considered property. I liked all that stuff. There's a character that's brought back in here, and a Mike Grell character. I forget who. I wasn't really familiar with Mike Grell before I read this book, but if Joshua Brand ever came back in a comic book, I would probably pick it up. And as far as I can tell, it hasn't happened. This is from the early 90s when a whole bunch of independent publishers were springing up, and this was a very good book. I really enjoyed it. Then after seeing the Avengers, I knew that the upcoming Avengers movies were going to revolve around the Infinity Gauntlet, and let's be honest, we know that the comic books aren't going to be copied very faithfully to these movies. They're very good movies, but you have to like take them as 2 separate entities. So I know that the Infinity Gauntlet, this was a great story though. I especially like the beginning of it when you know, the story revolves around a character named Thanos who is in love with death, and in the Marvel universe there are these celestial beings who they're just kind of there. They're needed for the running of the universe, and death is one of them. Thanos is in love with death. He dies, and this was before this book starts. Death brings him back because she feels there's too much life in the universe, and she wants him to like get rid of about half of it. But he's in love with her, so he wants to impress her, and he goes and captures these Infinity Gems, puts them on this gauntlet, and he can control everything. And I'm not going to tell you what the Infinity Gems are because this is kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. I came up with the idea this morning when I was looking to see if I had certain Batman books, and now I'm doing the video. Okay, this was a very good book. This is another one I found at Half Price Books. I don't know why I don't take the labels off, but I don't. A lot of times, sometimes I do. Anyways, this is the Creage Girl War. This predates me reading Marvel Comics, which I think in other videos I made it pretty clear that I mostly read Marvel Comics when I was a kid. And this was a very satisfying story. You have Ant-Man in here in a couple of stories. Well, in one he's like Yellow Jacket, but he goes inside, you know, Vision has, breaks down. I love this here. It's like, help me, 3 cows shot me down. And this was what the artist actually wanted to use, or the writer, I'm not sure which, wanted to use, but the editor shot him down on it, so he got to use it in this this omnibus edition. This goes back to 71, I think, if I remember correctly. At any rate, it was the early 70s. You have Rick Jones in here and the original Captain Marvel, and this is just the whole tale of the Kree Skrull War, which the Skrull don't exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as yet because they're more or less properties of the Fantastic Four. So if you want to know about them, you should find this book. This is just really good. Yeah, it's really good backstory for the Marvel Universe. And of course, the next Captain America movie is Civil War, so I had to go back and get this compilation. This is back from 2005, and I have to say that the story was good, but I didn't really like it. I kind of felt, essentially what happens is there's these D-list superheroes on a reality show, and they're chasing these criminals, and one of them is called Nitro, who has the ability to blow himself up. Oh, by the way, warning, spoilers, and yeah, so like after that, the public turns against superheroes. Johnny Storm gets beat up and ends up in the hospital. Woman at the funeral of one of the children who was killed by Nitro slaps Tony Stark, and he goes all out fascist pretty much. And they come up with the Superhero Registration Act, where all superheroes, anybody with superpowers has to register their power and get training from S.H.I.E.L.D. Captain America thinks this is just wrong. Tony Stark is like all for it, and that's the basic conflict in Civil War. It contains some iconic moments.